The sausage factory had a simple rule: everything that entered the building left as sausage. This included the rats scraped from the floors, the stale bread laced with rat poison meant to kill them, and sometimes the workers themselves who fell into the rendering vats. This was the secret ingredient in America's breakfast. A Chicago novelist was about to publish these horrific details, thinking he was writing a call for socialism. Instead, he would trigger a national panic and ignite a war against the most powerful industry in the country. In the late 19th century, America's Gilded Age projected an image of immense progress. Factories churned out new products, cities expanded, and industrialists amassed legendary fortunes. But this progress hid a dark operational secret. The American home had become a chemical battlefield, and the casualties were mounting. With zero government regulation, profit became the sole objective for a new kind of industrialist. Their weapon of choice was deception. Their targets were every family in the country. The first front in this war was the medicine cabinet. A mother trying to calm her crying infant might reach for a bottle of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup, unaware that its key ingredient was morphine. A man seeking vitality might drink Radithor, a popular tonic that promised energy but delivered a slow, painful death from radium poisoning. These companies ran brilliant marketing campaigns. They sold addiction as relief and poison as a cure. The public trusted the labels, having no idea they were purchasing weapons designed for a war of attrition against their own bodies. The second front was the kitchen pantry. City dairies stretched their supply by mixing chalk, plaster, and formaldehyde into their milk, a practice that led to thousands of infant deaths. Meatpackers revived spoiled, discolored beef by dusting it with borax, a chemical better suited for cleaning floors. This was the American diet of deception, a system where every meal carried a hidden risk, and every purchase funded an industry that viewed public health as an acceptable loss. The industrialists had built an empire on this illusion of safety, but two very different men, a chemist and a novelist, were about to launch a pincer attack they never saw coming. The first operative in this new war was Dr. Harvey Wiley. As the chief chemist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, he commanded a small intelligence unit inside enemy territory. For years, he had tried to fight the war conventionally. He published reports, testified before Congress, and warned politicians about the chemical invasion of America's food supply. But his efforts were consistently neutralized by the powerful food and drug lobbies. Their defensive line in Washington was impenetrable. Wiley realized that to win, he needed to change the rules of engagement. He needed undeniable proof, and he devised a radical operation to get it. In 1902, Wiley established an elite unit for his unconventional campaign. He recruited 12 young, healthy government clerks. Their mission was to eat every meal at a specially prepared table in the basement of the Agriculture Building. The press called it the hygienic table, but Wiley and his volunteers knew it by another name, the Poison Squad. These men were the shock troops of his operation. They signed waivers promising to consume capsules of borax, salicylic acid, and formaldehyde along with their daily meals. They were human test subjects in a government-sanctioned poisoning. The public became obsessed with the experiment. Newspapers published the daily bill of fare, detailing the poisoned butter, milk, and meat served to the volunteers. The squad members were hailed as heroes. They developed their own song, the Song of the Poison Squad.
My first day in the Poison Squad!
And a fierce loyalty to their commander, Dr. Wiley. But the mission took its toll. The men began to suffer from nausea, stomach aches, and severe weight loss. Wiley meticulously documented every symptom. Each headache and bout of sickness was another piece of ammunition. He was building an irrefutable case, proving that the chemicals industry leaders called harmless were, in fact, toxic. Wiley had fired the first shot, gathering damning evidence in his DC lab. But hundreds of miles away in Chicago, while Dr. Wiley was running his clinical operation, a different kind of operative was launching a deep cover reconnaissance mission, gathering intelligence that would prove far more explosive. Upton Sinclair was a passionate, 26-year-old writer with a singular goal: to advance the cause of socialism. He saw the industrial system as a machine that crushed the working class. To expose this machine, he targeted its most powerful engine, the Chicago meatpacking industry, known as the Beef Trust. For 7 weeks in 1904, Sinclair lived among the immigrant workers of Packingtown. He blended in, listened to their stories, and meticulously documented the operational reality of the trust. What he found was a conspiracy of filth and exploitation that defied belief. His intelligence dossier painted a horrifying picture. He watched workers handle meat after urinating on the floor because there were no bathrooms. He saw diseased cattle, marked as condemned by inspectors, secretly funneled back onto the main production line after dark. He documented how old, spoiled meat was returned from Europe, then doused with borax and glycerin to mask the smell, only to be recanned with a new inspection date. Most infamously, he learned of the poison bread. To kill the swarms of rats that infested the factories, workers would leave out poisoned bread. In the morning, the bread, the poison, and the dead rats were all swept into the hoppers of the meat grinders, an unlisted ingredient in America's breakfast sausage. Sinclair poured his findings into a manuscript he called The Jungle. He wrote with a fury, convinced his detailed account of worker exploitation would ignite a political firestorm and expose the evils of capitalism, but his intel was considered too dangerous. 5 different publishers rejected the book, fearing lawsuits from the powerful Beef Trust. One editor told him the public would never believe such horrors were possible. Undeterred, he threatened to publish it himself. He finally found a publisher willing to take the risk, and in February 1906, his report was released to the world. Sinclair had crafted his bomb and lit the fuse, expecting it to ignite a revolution for workers' rights. He had no idea the explosion would instead trigger a nationwide panic about what was for dinner. The publication of The Jungle was not a spark. It was a detonation. The American public recoiled in disgust. Housewives who read the book reportedly threw their breakfast sausage out the window. Across the country, meat sales plummeted by half. The panic went global. Upton Sinclair had launched his weapon, but it hit an unintended target. As he would later famously state, "I aimed for the public's heart, and by accident, I hit it in the stomach." He had failed to start a socialist movement, but he had successfully triggered a national security crisis. For President Theodore Roosevelt, the lurid details in Sinclair's novel were an alarm bell he had heard before. Years earlier, during the Spanish-American War, he had personally witnessed his own troops, the legendary Rough Riders, being poisoned by the tins of embalmed beef supplied by the very same Chicago trusts. He had testified before Congress about the scandal, only to watch the powerful lobbies bury the issue completely. So when The Jungle landed on his desk, he was deeply skeptical of the socialist messenger. Yet he knew from personal experience that the message itself was entirely credible. Roosevelt read the book, and his own battlefield memories were magnified into a national nightmare. His past suspicions were now confirmed as an industrial-scale conspiracy against the public. But the word of a novelist, even one echoing his own experience, was not enough to declare war. The commander-in-chief needed his own intelligence. In a shrewd tactical move, he bypassed his own Department of Agriculture, which he suspected was compromised. He dispatched 2 of his own trusted operatives on a covert mission to Chicago, Labor Commissioner Charles Neal and social worker James Reynolds. Their orders were to verify Sinclair's claims. Their findings, detailed in the confidential Neal Reynolds report, were damning. The report confirmed that The Jungle was not an exaggeration. In many respects, it was an understatement. With confirmed intelligence and a public demanding action, Roosevelt now had the political ammunition he needed. The final battle would be fought outside of the walls of the factory and in the halls of Congress. Armed with the Neal Reynolds report, Roosevelt launched his final assault on Congress. The resistance was immediate and fierce. The meatpacking and patent medicine lobbies deployed their full arsenal of political power, blocking legislation and denouncing the president's campaign as a reckless overreach. They controlled key committees and had congressmen on their payroll. For months, it seemed the industrial giants would successfully run out the clock, waiting for public anger to fade. But Roosevelt held a strategic weapon in reserve. He threatened to release the full, uncensored Neal Reynolds report to the press, an act that would have vaporized what little public trust remained in the industry. The threat was a checkmate. The lobbyists folded. In June of 1906, after a brutal legislative fight, Congress passed 2 of the most significant pieces of consumer protection legislation in American history. The Meat Inspection Act mandated that federal inspectors be present in all packing plants, putting government eyes directly on the factory floor. The Pure Food and Drug Act outlawed the sale of adulterated foods and drugs, required honest labeling of ingredients, and effectively ended the reign of patent medicine fraud. Dr. Wiley's long war was won. Sinclair's accidental crusade had succeeded. Together, these acts created the powerful federal bureaus that would evolve into the modern Food and Drug Administration and the United States Department of Agriculture. The agencies we now trust implicitly, the FDA and the USDA, weren't gifts handed down by a benevolent government. They were concessions, extracted from a captured system by public terror and presidential force. Is this proof that the only way to force a system to protect its people is to first prove that the system is poisoning them? If it was this easy with our food, what else could be hidden from the public?
If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most intriguing cases of manipulation and deception, don't miss what's coming next. Together, we'll uncover the truth behind the biggest deceptions, government money, and stories that shape our world. Hit the subscribe button and stay informed.